Hello, everyone. I'm Eduardo, and I'm the Oneness Company. I'm so glad that you've decided to tune in today. I wasn't sure who was going to show up for this event, and I'm excited for everyone that is tuning in. The Oneness Company, our purpose is to promote human thriving in the world, and we're focused right now on helping organizations experience more connection, celebration, and creativity. We believe these are the key pillars of human thriving that are not receiving enough attention these days. Our presentation today is going to be focused on breakthrough connections and how they impact breakthrough team performance. There's been a lot of research in this area of late as teams and organizations are focusing more on their culture and how people interact, because they're recognizing that the people are the core of their organizations, and if they're going to continue to progress at the pace that they'd like to, forming deeper connections and teamwork and focusing on the human aspects of working are going to be critically important. Let me see how I just lost context with my presentation. So let me see if I can find that again. There we go. So I'm going to offer some ideas today that I hope that are going to expand your understanding of connection and how it works not only in your organization, but in your personal life. Because wherever we go, it turns out that we are humans. And there's no two ways around that. So one of these most powerful ideas that I like people to take a hold of it, one's mind, once stretched to a new idea, never regains its original dimensions. One's mind, once stretched by a new idea, never regains its original dimensions. So I'm hoping to share some ideas with you today that even if you've heard them before, I hope I'm presenting them in a way that they soak in and give you a different viewpoint on the world and how you're relating to people in your organizations and how you're conducting and leading your teams. One of the most powerful ideas that I've come across in this context is this quote from John Naismith, the author of Megatrends, and he made this quote back in the late 80s. The most exciting breakthroughs of the 21st century will not occur because of technology, but because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human. And if you think about it, we're actually experiencing this a great deal these days because there's so much talk about AI and how AI is going to replace humans, and it has people fearful about what that means. It has them fearful about what am I offering to the world if machines might potentially take over the work that I'm doing now, and replace the offering that I see myself making in terms of how I'm creating value in the world. So why should we care about connection in relation to teamwork? Teamwork really is about humans interacting with each other. And at the very core of that is connection. But let's zoom out for a second from your organization. Let's think about what's happening in our broader culture. Many of you might be aware that there is an epidemic of loneliness. The Wall Street Journal quotes reporting loneliness is a growing public health problem, a hidden epidemic threatening our well-being, even our livelihood. With 1/3 of Americans over age 45 reporting loneliness. Also, the New York Times, loneliness can have serious medical consequences: heart disease, cancer, depression, diabetes, and suicide associated with a reduction in lifespan, equivalent to 15 cigarettes, smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And as we progress, I'll give you some insight into why this is happening. The Washington Post, young adults are the loneliest generation in America, according to some surveys that have been conducted. 69% of this age group felt that the people around them were not really with them. And we're talking about the broader society here, but people go to work, and these same phenomena are occurring in work environments. And you can make a great argument that they're more concentrated in these work environments because people are spending so much time there, and there's an agenda that they're focused on achieving. At work, loneliness reduces task performance, limits creativity, impairs other aspects of executive function, such as reasoning and decision making. And that's from the Harvard Business Review. Engagement. There's lots of companies are focusing on engagement, and there's not really a great definition of what this is. I take it really to mean like how into what you're doing are you into it? Are you really excited and inspired by the work that you're doing? According to a Gallup study, and this is a 2018 one, but they do this regularly, only 34% of US workers are engaged. And if you're a startup, you're probably way better than that, because by starting up, you're dealing with something new and you're a smaller organization. So chances are you're way better than this. But I don't know that if you're at 100%, only you can say, and maybe in interacting with your teammates, you can start to consider how excited are people about what they're doing. Are they showing up just for the paycheck, or are they really super engaged about it? And I hope that they are better, because I think startups are probably leading the edge, or leading the world in terms of how involved their teams are in the mission of the startup. As organizations get bigger and bigger and bigger, people get more and more disconnected and rooted in the routine of the organization. So 34% engaged, the rest, 66%, are either actively engaged or not engaged at all, or neutral, just showing up and going through the motions. So as a startup, why should you really care about this lack of connection, which I equate with engagement? One great book, The Happiness Advantage, says that the greatest predictor of teams and team achievement was how the members felt about one another, how they felt about one another. Nothing about their level of talent, the level of knowledge or skill. It's about how they felt about each other. The more team members socialize and interact face to face, the more engaged they feel, the more energy they have, the longer they can stay focused on a task. I want to take a moment just to mention, we're going to do, hopefully if so many of you guys will come into the meeting later on and show your face, we'll do some exercises together. That's totally voluntary, but you'll still be able to take away some interesting ideas and thoughts that could impact, and hopefully will impact, how you're interacting with your team. The more team members invest in their social cohesion, the better the results of their work. So you see, social connection of the group is vital. The Culture Code, another great book, The Secrets of Highly Successful Groups. 3 attributes come out of that book. It's fantastic through and through. I highly recommend it. Here's 3 key takeaways that dovetail with what we're talking about here. Build safety. Signals of connection generate bonds of belonging and identity. And we'll get into later about signals of connection. Share vulnerability. Habits of mutual risk drive trusting cooperation. That's habits of mutual risk. That means if you do something a little bit awkward where you're at risk of failure, and then someone else takes the similar risk, then you become closer together. You start to trust each other. Establish purpose. Narratives create shared goals and value. We start to understand and see each other as working together for a common end. We know that we're on the same team when we can have that shared mission. The Trust Factor, another wonderful book. High-performing organizations reinforce the flow of oxytocin. It's the trust or love hormone. You may have heard about it before. So this Paul Zak, who wrote this book, actually went in and measured the oxytocin levels in people in various activities. actually took blood samples and measured the oxytocin hormone present in their blood. We're not at a point yet where people can do that widespread, but I'm hopeful that organizations at some point in the future will have some sort of passive way of checking into the oxytocin level in their organization. That would be a fantastic meter on how people are really feeling in terms of the level of belonging and closeness they have in their work environments. So oxytocin is key to high trust organizations. 74% of high trust organizations have 74% less stress, 106% more energy at work, 50% higher productivity, 13% fewer sick days, 76% more engagement, 29% more satisfaction with their lives, 40% less burnout. We work hard in startups, hard to get things going. If we figure out how to have more trust, we're going to be more productive, more creative, more effective across the board, and just have, frankly speaking, we're going to have a better time. 8 management behaviors that foster trust, intentionally build relationships, facilitate whole person growth, and show vulnerability. An easy way to do that is to show people stuff that you don't know how to do. I'm a father of twins, and I remember taking them to a dance class that I had signed up for, and they were just there, hanging out because it was my time to, I'm divorced, so I took them to the dance class specifically because I wanted them to see me fail. I wanted them to see that it's a part of life to try things new and not know how to do them. As parents, we've gone through many of the growth paths that our children are going through, and we failed along the way when our children see us, and same thing with our colleagues at work. When they see us doing something that we've been doing for years, a skill that we developed, and then we're trying to transfer that to them as they're learning new, then there's a sense that, hey, we aren't the same, we're different. But if you show them, hey, there are things that you're doing that you don't know how to do either. And by definition, if you're in a startup leading a new idea, bringing a new idea into the world, you're going to be failing. And to create an atmosphere, a culture around that, and allow people to actually celebrate those failures is going to build more trust. Social Physics, again, fascinating book. This is by Alex Pentland. He's a professor at MIT in their, I forget now the name of the lab they have. They have a special lab. And he speaks in terms of how social networks make organizations smarter. Groups have a collective intelligence that is different from the individual intelligence of group members, a key factor in predicting group performance. So there's a group intelligence that emerges out of an organization. If you're working together, that group intelligence is going to make you stronger. If you're not working together, you're not going to have the same gains and feelings. You're not going to be acting as one. The largest factor in predicting group intelligence is the equality of conversational turn taking. So if you have a meeting, everyone is open and people can all contribute. If you have people that are dominating the conversation and other people aren't coming forward, you're probably falling short of what could be happening in that meeting. And there's lots of things that could be done about that. But I think the first thing to do is have an awareness that if you've got people that aren't participating, then you're missing out on establishing that group intelligence that you need to really thrive as an organization. So again, that's equality of conversational turn taking. The second most important factor was social intelligence. How you are at actually listening to each other and reading what's happening socially. In this work done by Alex Pentland and his team, they found that teams that had at least one woman present in them actually generally performed better in terms of having this group intelligence emerge, because women traditionally have a much stronger eye on relational aspects. There's lots of psychological studies and research around how women pay much more closer attention to relational aspects of the dynamics of humans than do men typically. That doesn't mean that men can't get better at it or that some men are actually exceptional at it. That just means in kind of the average sense, that's what you're seeing. Again, if any of you have any questions, I encourage you to hop in so we make this more dynamic. We're about halfway through now with 15 minutes to go. So humans are hardwired to seek connection. If you think about our lives in prehistoric times, where every day was real, we were fighting for survival. We're fighting the elements. We're fighting for food. We're needing to battle against predators. Here I've got a picture of a woolly mammoth being taken down by some prehistoric hunters, and they're working together. But what you need to know is that because our survival depended on acting together in unison, if anyone was ever separated from their clan or tribe, their bodies would have a stress response to that. And that stress response was designed to wake them up to the threat they faced and have them move back to join the group. So we have this pre-language circuitry. This is circuitry before human language was even invented or conceived of. People communicated and they felt the connection between them. And when they didn't feel the connection, there was a threat response. And I think that's what we're seeing some of today, because people are not experiencing this deeper level of connection that happens below the surface of language. So that brings the questions out to what is the connection that holds us together, that we need to put more attention on in organizations to cultivate this teamwork. And I think one of the most powerful ideas that you can take away from this is that connection is a sensory experience. It's like having a great gourmet meal where you're tuned in to everything that's happening, the smells, the sound of the food crunching, the texture of the food, the play of the light on the food. We can bring that same level of attention to our connections and our relationships with people, and we'll start to feel the connection that exists between us. In a second here, I'm going to show you something another powerful idea around this. But if all you did was hey, what does it feel like to be with someone else, right? What are the senses that are involved with that? You know, does someone creep you out? Does someone feel really open and welcome and excited? Is there excitement, enthusiasm? Are they angry? You know, what is that? That's part of your connection with someone. One thing I wanted to offer is that I studied electrical engineering in college before then going on to work with an aerospace electronics company, General Electric, in upstate New York. And then I went to law school. And then and I've been a lawyer for 25 years. So it's only in the last really decade or so that I've started putting more and more attention on connection, realizing that, you know, I'm going through a breakup and a divorce. I realized that I was really quite unconscious about how connections were created. So I ultimately became a student of connection and took workshops and training with some world-class experts. But one of the things that I just recently discovered that really helped me understand part of the dynamic that's happening in our world today in terms of why we're seeing an epidemic of loneliness is that there are two basic types of communications that dominate our world today. And one type is called connection-less communication, and the other type is called connection-oriented communication. Connection-less communication is like the texting, the snail mail, the social media, the advertising, and to some extent, even the conversation that we're having now, because it's not a two-way conversation, it's a totally one-way conversation. There are many of you that are listening to me now, but I don't have a sense of what's happening on the other end. I cannot see you and the responses or level of attention that you're providing to my words. So in that sense, we're having a connection-less communication. Now, this type of communication is not the kind where we're sensing our belonging with each other. Connection-oriented communications is if we're having a two-way conversation. and we're paying attention to each other. And those are the kinds that are happening less often these days as we're dominated by email and text and social media. And you consider all the other messages that we receive. I can go into a lot more depth on this if you have any questions, but I think it's critical for us to understand we have these two types. And the type that's most powerful is when we have a connection-oriented communication that's two-way, real-time dialogue, and we're focusing attention on each other. One thing I can say more about that is that connectionless communication is great because it doesn't require both parties to be present. I can write a letter or a note to you, and you don't even have to be aware that I'm writing it, and I send it. It can be waiting for you to pick up anytime you want. That's a great benefit. It's super efficient. However, in a real-time connection-oriented communication, it takes more energy to conduct that. And sometimes we take the habits from our connectionless communication world and we bring those into our real-time connection. So you see people that, you know, sometimes they're listening, thinking about what they're going to say in reply, but not really taking in the message that's coming. So important distinction: connectionless communications and connection-oriented communication, which we really need way more of in this world. And for the ultimate teamwork, that's what we need more of. One of the most powerful metaphors that I use in thinking about what connection-oriented communication is like, if you think about the paper cup telephone, you know that this works from your childhood experiments, and the practice you have children and you've done it more recently, that when the string is not taut, that there's no communication between the two cups. And when it's tight, now vibration can transfer across it. Now, connection-oriented communications works similarly. It works in this way that there's a tension between us, and that tension is really governed by the quality of our attention. And if you think about it, it's very simple, but there's two very radical things going on here. One is that we got one side that's, if you're on the left and I'm on the right, in the right cup, I experience you tugging, I experience the tension, and I experience what that, how that connection feels in my body. That's where the sensation starts to come in. I can feel how I'm tugging, and I can feel how you're tugging back. And the better we get at maintaining attention on what that connection is in relation to the other person, then we start to build deeper and deeper understanding of what's happening. The other person, we actually, in a sense, become a unit. And again, this is a very powerful metaphor, and you can really, if you play with this in terms of how you're relating to someone, leaning in with your attention to try to feel the connection that exists there, you'll see that there's a lot of things to be gained from that. But there is a tension, it's a sensory experience, you can feel it and you have a choice over it. And if you happen to break the connection, someone distracts you and the string goes slack, you're gonna lose something there. You know, you're stopped listening, you're distracted, but if you pull it tight again, you'll be back connected again. Now you may have lost something, just like if you're on a cell phone call and you lose that signal. It's very important for you to recognize this. So the thing that we're lacking when we're being trained, being conditioned by with all our connectionless communication is that we don't have to pay attention. We can slack that string off. But when we do, there's a cost to it. And it's also one of the greatest gifts that you can offer to someone is by keeping that string tight and playing with that. Not too tight though, because you pull too tight, people can, right? You got to find the balance. So that's a very powerful idea. And you can, if you have multiple parties together, you can think of how we're all interlinked with layers of tension. Along these lines, you know, there's been a lot of research to show that 93% of communication is nonverbal. 93% is nonverbal. So that means in all your team interaction, there's a lot going on beyond the words that are being spoken. Way more is going on underneath the table, just like in this picture here where I have the iceberg. The words are the very tip of the iceberg. So you need to listen to tone. I invite you to listen, to watch the eye contact, make eye contact, notice the quality of eye contact. Are people open or closed? Are they penetrating you? Are they open to new ideas? You have so much power over that as happening non-verbally. And in the workshops that we conduct, we actually have people experience this level of non-verbalness and start to begin to articulate it so that they can cultivate their capacity to put attention on it. It's a level of mindfulness, but it's very practical. I mean, if you probably experienced it when you're with someone and you know they're not listening to you, right? Because you're picking up on the nonverbals, even if they're nodding yes and no, you have a sense that you're not really connecting with them. And there's so much more to explore there. Dr. Brene Brown, PhD, many of you may have encountered her. She's quite kind of a celebrity in the field of self-development and understanding of deeper emotions and expressing vulnerability. She defines connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. That's embodied in the paper cup. When you feel the tension, you feel that someone is giving you the attention, right? You start to act in a unit. You can only do that if you value the other person. If you don't value them and you slack off, or if you slack off, it will appear as though you don't value them, that you don't value them. So when they give and receive without judgment, and when they derive sustenance and strength from the relationship. And that's what you want happen in your teams. Your teams feel like they're stronger because you're together than they do separately. Here's a super connection framework. Normally, if we were on a different platform, I'd put us in the breakout groups and we'd start to do exercises around this. But one of the most important things you can do is set the context. Set the context of how important connection is to your organization. It's important to your own personal well-being, and it's important to the well-being of every person in your organization. And when you think about the broader context of loneliness, you know that we have many people in our culture, and I'd say almost everyone needs more connection than they're getting, and they may not even be aware of it. So if you cultivate how to provide deeper connection to everyone that you meet, you will always be offering something that creates value. And if you do that in the context of your organization, you will be strengthening it, making it a place that people want to stay. That you'll be building loyalty and longevity in addition to improving the performance and capabilities of your team. A key part of the super connection framework beyond setting context. Well, one thing I would say about setting context, we've got a few more minutes here, is that if you set the context that every human you meet needs connection and that you can offer it to them and you're going to make their world better by doing it and create value for them, this can change everything in your life, and you'll look for ways to do that. Another context that I play with oftentimes is that if you assume that the person you meet might be the last human, maybe the last human you ever see in your life. You may be the last human they see in their life. We never know what's going to happen, but if you just play with that context, you'll see how it can shape the quality of attention that you're bringing to a situation. And again, that's that tension between you and the other person. What's the quality of that? How soft is it, right? Is it too soft that you're not connecting? You're not open to what's happening? Is it too tense so that you can't really transmit the kind of belongingness that you really would like to convey? And when you're sensing the moment, you're sensing that feeling between you, that tension. The last thing you can do beyond sensing the moment is you can share the moment. You can say, hey, I'm noticing, like, for example, right now, I'm noticing I'm so curious about what's happening on the other end of my speaking here. You know, are you guys actually getting this? And I have no understanding of what's happening at all on the other side. So I hope this has been valuable to you. We're at the 30-minute mark. Some powerful ideas. I think one of the biggest ones you can take away with you is that connection is a sensory experience. and to start looking and start asking yourself, what is there to sense? What is there new about what's happening right now in my relationship with someone, in that interaction? To start feeling into that. The other big tip I'll just leave you with is, anytime you do something to break a habit, you do something funny like, I don't know, pull your ear while you're talking to someone, you're going to feel awkward. But that breaking your habit is going to release energy and cause you to pay attention to the situation in a different way. It's going to elevate the quality of the connection. It doesn't have to be something as ridiculous and absurd as pulling your ear. But even just holding your breath, talking a little bit more slowly than when you do, leaning in to the screen more than you normally would. These are very powerful things to do, and I invite you to explore this. I hope that this has created value for you. Please reach out and connect me, Eduardo Drake, at the Oneness Company. My email is eduardo@theonenesscompany.com. Again, we're a startup. This is a side hustle for me at the moment, but I'm quite excited about bringing these insights into organizations and helping them with retreats and their meetings and building deeper level connection as a part of their organizational culture. If any of this is interesting to you and you want to bounce ideas, or you want us to come in and do a 1-hour workshop with your team, we're doing that. We're also looking for startups that are interested in being part of a pilot project where we're going to measure connection before we come in and do workshops over a period of 6 weeks. And then we're going to measure the level of connection with afterward, because we want to get the firmer data that the methods that we're employing are having the deeper impacts in the cultures that we're interacting with. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Eduardo Drake, founder of the Oneness Company, wishing you an amazing day.